Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day, and we're back with another top 6 build video for Elden Ring, and this time I'm going to be going over what I think are the top 6 best dexterity builds based on your guys' votes. I did put a poll out to see if you guys wanted to see dexterity, intelligence, or faith next, and you guys absolutely went hard, and dexterity is the next top 6 build video that we are going to be doing right now. So dexterity as a stat inside of Elden Ring lets you use very quick and mobile weapons to basically make light work of just about any enemy inside of the game. And with over 60 dexterity weapons inside the game, it definitely makes it hard to figure out what weapon you want to pilot into becoming Elden Lord. How am I supposed to decide between all of these friggin' weapons? So that's hopefully where I come in to make your life a little bit easier. But let's not beat around the bush, boys. Since the addition of the DLC, dexterity weapons have kind of gone to poop in a lot of people's eyes, mainly because every enemy in the DLC sucks massive doodle. No, but seriously, FromSoft cranked that difficulty meter up in the DLC, and it became very apparent that strength weapons quickly rose to the meta for beating the DLC as poise damage was king. But trust me, after you see these 6 amazing dexterity weapons, you're just gonna hut tour all over those old strength builds that you used to run. So don't get frustrated, get even with the 6 best dexterity builds for Shadow of the Erdtree. Alright, so I've rambled on long enough in the intro, said what I needed to say, so let's jump straight into the video. Alright, so the first build that's going to be kicking us off on this list is the Nagakiba Bloodstorm build. So this build will be utilizing the power of the winds to just blow your competition away, as well as having some bleed build up, because who doesn't love watching the enemies explode for big damage? Alright, so if you do want to use the Nagakiba for yourself, you are going to need 18 strength and also 22 dexterity, and then the scaling for this weapon when it is fully maxed out to plus 25 will be D for strength and B for dexterity, meaning this weapon scales pretty decently with dexterity. But we're not keeping that B in dexterity, because the way we set up our Ash of War is we're going to be putting it on keen scaling, which does take dexterity to an A, which is much better. So Ozzy, what makes this build so enjoyable to play? Well, I mean, for one, who doesn't want to throw little mini tornadoes at the enemy? Literally hurling tornadoes at the enemy, hitting them right in their bloody noggin. You can spam the living crap out of Stormblade. It costs no mana to spam, and it's very quick, so obviously you can continuously keep spamming it and just making the enemies look silly. Stormblade is just such a great Ash of War, and it really does make light work of a lot of situations, especially the range that this Ash of War brings to the table. You can throw it quite far. Like, sometimes you feel like it's not going to reach the enemy. That's a little bit too far. It still gets there, slaps them for a nice 2k. Happy days. And on top of that, the Nagakiba does come with native bleed build-up on the weapons. 45 blood build-up, you know, it's great, but it could be better, and that's what we've done. Because we are keeping this on keen scaling, this is a top 6 dex build video. Gonna try and keep all these weapons primarily scaling off dex. But we are gonna use Blood Flame, the incantation Blood Flame. You can apply Blood Flame onto your Nagakiba, and then all you need to do when you have Blood Flame on the Nagakiba is use Stormblade right up in the enemy's face. Stuff using it at range. We're getting up close and personal with the enemy. Use Stormblade because you will slash the enemy with the Nagakiba, which will have Blood Flame on it, which will pull that Blood Flame on them. Hopefully keep ticking the blood build up. But then you will hit them with Stormblade, and you know, you get 2 hits for the price of 1, so you do a lot more damage that way. And that is my preferred way to use Stormblade and use the Nagakiba Blood Storm build, is just get up in the enemy's face and just keep chucking tornadoes with Blood Flame on the weapon, and you're going to see really big result. Obviously, I quickly went over the Ash of War at the start, but I do have Stormblade, and we are putting it on keen scaling. Moving on over to the armor and talismans that we are running with this setup, and all I'm going to say is get used to seeing White Mask with the Rakshasa armor, gauntlets, and greave. This is pretty much going to be most of the armor setups throughout a lot of these builds. The only thing that changes is the talisman and the weapons and a few other niche things. Just get used to seeing the Rakshasa armor set, because it is just so good at giving you that increase to all damage with basically little to no penalty. And there's no other armor like this in the game, unless you're using like a jump build or something. You're probably going to be running the Rakshasa armor. And we do have the White Mask here to try and give us a 10% increase to damage when blood buildup is in the vicinity. For the talismans, we have Shard of Alexander, Rotwing Sword Insignia, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and the Enraged Divine Beast. The Enraged Divine Beast is to increase Stormblade's damage because it is a storm ability. Same with Shard of Alexander. And then for the stats, I would recommend, if you are going to run this Naga Keeper Bloodstorm build at level 150, we got 60 Vigor, 18 Mind, 20 Endurance, 18 Strength, 61 Dexterity, and 33 Faith. The 33 Faith investment is so we can use Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength, and Howl of Shabriri. So next build up on this list is going to be none other than the Frozen Backhand Blades. The Backhand Blades are arguably one of the coolest weapons that got added into the DLC. Now I know it's probably just the curved swords that have been turned backwards, but come on. They look pretty fucking cool. Oh, and did I mention that you can run attack with these weapons without breaking the run animation? So the weapon requirements, if you want to use the backhand blade for yourself, you're going to need 10 strength and 13 dexterity. And when this weapon is fully maxed out at plus 25, the scaling for this weapon is C for strength and C for dexterity, meaning that this is actually a quality weapon instead of a dexterity weapon. But for some reason, if you put the backhand blades into keen scaling, the scaling becomes S for dexterity, that's pretty fucking good. So what makes this build so enjoyable to play? Well, for one, they're an absolute monster of a weapon. When you set these bad boys up correctly, they do not disappoint. Like I already mentioned that you can run attack with these without breaking that run animation, which does open up a lot of windows to make really cool and unique like dashing kind of build. And if you don't know, dash attack is just a run attack for anyone that is still a little bit unsure about that. I definitely was. So you can put together some really interesting dashing builds with the backhand blades, considering that you can just keep running and attacking. You don't stop running. You can just keep running and attacking until your stamina gauge gives out. So for this particular setup, I chose to go for Cold Affinity, which gives us frost buildup on the weapon. We have 105 frost buildup, and with the speed that the backhand blades bring to the table, which means you're going to see a lot of frostbite explosions on the enemy, which is just more damage for us. Now this weapon does have S scaling and dex when you do put it on the keen scaling with your Ash of War, which is very impressive. That's crazy. I think it's going to be up there with the very few weapons that actually have S scaling for dexterity. But unfortunately, that is not the way we're going to be setting up this weapon. I feel like the best way to use the backhand blade is just putting a status effect on there. Whether it be bleed, frost, or poison, they're probably your three best options. You can go fire, you can go holy if you really want to. But I think cold, poison, and bleed are definitely your three best options for the backhand blade. They're an absolute monster on their own, but if you start incorporating some status effect, yeah, it's a pretty strong setup. Backhand blade seriously put the game on easy mode, and if you haven't tried them, what the fuck are you doing? Now the Ash of War that I am running with the backhand blades, you're pretty much open to use whatever you want. I have got Swift Slash on here with Cold Affinity obviously, but I have just got Swift Slash because it does cleave a lot of enemies. You can just AoE a lot of enemies down very, very quickly. Especially if you got bleed or cold affinity. Now moving on over to the armor and the talismans that we are running with this setup. There it is again, the Rakshasa armor. I told you were going to see it, and you're going to see it a hell of a lot more. But we have switched up a headpiece and we are running the Mushroom Crown. I forgot to add these in here. I'm going to add these in right now. Right now that I've added in the full build here, the main reason we're taking Mushroom Crown is because we got Poison Hand and also Deadly Poison Perfume Bottle. If you guys do not know, Deadly Poison Perfume Bottle, its Ash of War does apply poison to yourself, which will give you the buff of Poison Hand, give you the buff of Mushroom Crown, and Kindred of Rot Exaltation. We are running Shard of Alexander mainly for the Ash of War. You don't have to have Shard of Alexander. You could put the Lacerating Cross Tree talisman here, which is going to enhance your dash attacks. So you can just do those running R2s, which are very strong and you hit multiple times. So the Lacerating Cross Tree is going to boost that by 15%. But I did find myself using Swift Slash from time to time. So I've just got the Shard of Alexander here, Rotten Winged Sword Insignia, and also the Millicent's Prosthesis. And for the stats, I would recommend, if you do want to run this setup for yourself at level 150, we do have 60 Vigor, 18 Mind, 20 Endurance, 10 Strength, 57 Dexterity, 30 Intelligence. The 30 Intelligence just to help us get a little bit more extra damage because we are going into cold scaling. And then last but not least, of course, 25 Faith, so we can use Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. So moving on over to the next build on this list, and this one is an old favorite, an old classic from 2 years ago when the game first came out. A build that pretty much everyone used to run. A build that scares the absolute crap out of pretty much 80% of the bosses inside of Elden Ring. I'm of course talking about the jumping twin blade bleed build. It may have been nerfed a little while ago, but this setup still kicks ass. So the twin blades that I have opted to use are the Godskin Peeler and also just the regular twin blade you find at the start of the game. Now I tried to keep most of these builds dex only, but it is hard. Dex weapons tend to shine much better when you're using status effects. Not always, but almost always that is the case. So apologies for the lack of pure dex builds in this top 6 video. Status effects are just too strong and we apply them very quickly thanks to dex weapons being so quick. So I am going to go over the Godskin Peeler stats because the Godskin Peeler stats are higher than the twin blade. So if you got these stats, you'll be pretty much able to use most of the other twin blades in this category. So to use the Godskin Peeler for yourself, you're going to need a whopping 17 strength, bit of a hefty one there, and also 22 dexterity. And when this weapon is fully maxed out at plus 25, the scaling for this weapon is D for strength and B for dexterity, meaning this weapon scales pretty well with dexterity. So what makes this build so enjoyable to play? Now I will say one thing, this video is not a best to worst top 6, like I'm not categorizing these, you know, they're all over the place. I'm just doing these in the order that I recorded them. But if I were to, you know, pick which one was the best and the strongest, it's gonna be this motherfucking setup. This setup is so ridiculous. The double twin blades with bleed while jumping, no enemy can survive this. If the enemy can be bled, they're not going to survive more than like 5 or 6 jumps on New Game Plus 7. They're just dead. It is ridiculous. I've always mainly used one twin blade after the nerf. You don't get as much bleed build up, I think, when you do the jump attack. But we're not just doing the jump attacks for the bleed build up. We're doing the jump attacks because it just does that much more damage. The twin blades are very similar to the curved blades. When you jump, you do multiple hits in the air, which is very good for one, applying those status effects and just laying on a shit ton of fucking damage. It's been a while since I've picked up the double twin blade build, but I don't know why I haven't. This build absolutely destroys. It goes through the DLC like butter, like a hot knife through friggin' butter. There wasn't too much that even showed resistance except for obviously fucking big boy Radahn. But even then, it takes a couple of jumps. You just got to find the window and you will take Radahn down. He not even him can withstand the almighty force that is the Godskin Peeler and the friggin' twin blade. If you couldn't tell by the way I was explaining why this build's so good, I obviously like just jumping with this build. That's all you need to do. Don't, like, you can go for a swing every now and then, but the best way to use this build is jump attack, jump attack, jump attack. Did you do a jump attack? Do another jump attack. Look, there's a window. Jump attack. But to be fair, the power stancing moveset with the twin blades is still pretty decent as well. You actually do have pretty decent reach with these weapons given that they are twin blades. So that is definitely handy and you do get a bit of distance while you are using the power stancing move. But like I said, just jump attack, jump attack, jump attack, jump attack. So for the Ashes of War that we are running with the Godskin Peeler and the twin blade, for the Godskin Peeler I am running Seppuku. The main reason we want to use Seppuku is this does count as blood loss build up in the vicinity, so it will proc White Mask and Lord of Blood Exaltation, giving you a nice plus 30% increase to all damage, massive. And then for the regular twin blade, I've just put another Blood Ash of War. I've literally got Bloodhound Step and I've just scaled it to bleed and, you know, we just called it a day. Now moving on over to the armor and talismans that we are running, I can confirm this isn't just a full Rax to Sard set. I'm giving myself a pat on the back for that one. No, we are still running White Mask. We do have the Greybird's Black Quill armor here this time, so we can increase our jump attack power. And then Raxar Gauntlets, Raxar Greaves. For the talismans, we've got Claw Talisman, further increasing our jump attack damage. Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and Millicent's Prosthesis. And then for the stats, I would recommend you guys take, if you do want to run this particular setup for yourself, at level 180. I've kind of met in the middle between 200 and 150. So we have 60 Vigor, 16 Mind, 24 Endurance, 17 Strength, 57 Dexterity, 25 Faith, and also 50 Arcane. The big hefty Arcane investments to give us a little bit more bonus damage and hopefully get those blood build-ups to proc faster. Okay, so next build on this list is actually a build that kind of surprised me when I was going through and testing everything to figure out what I was actually going to put on this friggin' list. So if you like to spin to win inside of Elden Ring, well, this next build is probably going to tickle your pickle. I'm of course talking about the spinning scythe build for the regular scythe and also the grave scythe weapons. inside of Elden Ring. For this particular setup, I am just running the scythe. You can choose to use the grey scythe if you want to. So if you want to use just a regular scythe for this particular setup, you are going to need 14 strength and 14 dexterity to actually wield this weapon. And then the scaling for this weapon, when it is maxed out at plus 25, is going to be D for strength and B for dexterity, meaning this weapon is going to scale very well with dexterity. But when you do put the scaling of this weapon into keen, you do get a nice A scaling for dexterity, which is really, really good. So what makes this build so enjoyable to play, you ask? Well, it all comes down to one Ash of War and one Ash of War only, and that is spinning weapon. You know, the Ash where you put the weapon in front of you and it starts spinning at 100 miles an hour like a bloody propeller on an airplane. And just like birds that go through the propellers and gets deleted, any enemy that goes through spinning weapon Ash of War is also going to be met with the same fate. Just like what I said with the other build where you just need to jump attack, jump attack, jump attack. With this scythe build, all you need to do is Ash of War spam, Ash of War spam, Ash of War spam. As soon as you find an opening, spam spinning weapon and just watch the boss that you're fighting get absolutely minced. Now the scythe as a weapon overall is very decent. Just all the scythes in general, actually very, very good weapons. They're quite long, so you do get a lot of reach on them. They have very decent, you know, light and R2 attack. The charge R2 is also pretty decent too. But I think the main selling point, the best selling point of the scythes in general is they all come with native blood build up on the weapon. So if you scale these with bleed, or if you use blood flame blade, like you can probably see in the clips in front of you, you're going to further increase this blood build up, which means you're going to get the blood build up proc even faster on the enemies. But because we are using this spinning weapon Ash of War, we can only use blood flame blade if the scythe is in standard heavy keen or quality affinity. So just remember that before you go and whack this in cold or magic and wonder why you can't put blood flame blade on the actual weapon. But all you need to do to profit massively inside Elden Ring is attach the spinning weapon Ash of War and use blood flame blade, and you're just going to absolutely waltz your way all the way to being Elden Lord. I guarantee it. And then for the Ash of War, we are using spinning slash, and we can still put this on keen scaling, which is going to take our dexterity from a B to an A. We don't have to go magic, you don't have to go cold. You can just keep this keen scaling, which is really strong, because then you're able to still apply those weapon buffs like lightning affinity, blood flame blade, black flame, all that good jazz. And it just really makes the Ash of War even stronger. So moving on over to the armor and talismans, no surprise here, white mask with the Rakshasar setup. I know, okay? It's just too good to not use. For the talismans, we got Shard of Alexander, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and also Millicent's Prosthesis. You're probably wondering where the two-handed talisman is. It probably would be really good to run with some of these builds, maybe especially the scythe. If you guys do not know, a few of you guys told me in the comment section, the two-handed sword talisman does not apply to Ashes of War. It only applies to the weapon itself. So that is why I have gone with Millicent's Prosthesis over like the two-handed sword talisman, because it just doesn't apply to the Ash of War. And now moving on over to the stats, if you do want to use this setup for yourself at level 150, we have 60 vigor, 19 mind, 20 endurance, 18 strength, 60 dexterity, and 33 faith. Alright, moving on over to number 5 on this list, and this is a weapon that I think is very overlooked, a weapon that is heavily slept on. I'm of course talking about none other than the Guardian Sword Spear, which is one of the very few halberds that actually scales primarily off dexterity. So if you do want to wield the Guardian Sword Spear for yourself, the weapon requirements are 17 strength, hefty investment, and only 16 dexterity. But when this weapon is fully leveled up to plus 25, the scaling for this weapon is E for strength and B for dexterity, meaning it scales very well off dexterity, even though it has a higher strength requirement. So what makes this Guardian Sword Spear so enjoyable to use inside of Elden Ring? Well, for starters, this weapon packs a friggin' punch. It does not muck around. The Guardian Sword Spear ain't playing fair. This thing hits very, very hard. And with the right setup, with the right Ash of War, you can literally take this weapon to the next fucking level. Pretty much most Ashes of War are going to work with this weapon, but the main one that I have decided to put on this weapon, the main one that I see a lot of other people use when they're using the Guardian Sword Spear, and I can see why, it is the Sword Dance Ash of War. Now, you're not going to be spamming your Ash of War constantly, but it definitely does pay with this build to just spam Sword Dance for maximum profit. Now, given that the weapon is a halberd, it doesn't move super quick, but Sword Dance is a fairly quick Ash of War, or at least the first 2 slashes come out in very quick succession, and then you can follow up with another Ash of War input, and you drop a massive overhead chop, which does do very, very decent and respectable damage to the enemies, to the bosses. I found that this Ash of War, the Sword Dance, it really does put bosses in their place. It absolutely decimates them. So you can spam the Ash of War if you want, but the moveset for this weapon is also pretty respectable. So the light tag is pretty good. It's nothing crazy, but it is still very effective. The Charge R2, on the other hand, you basically get Spinning Slash. You do Spinning Slash Ash of War, where you spin twice with your weapon. The Guardian Sword Spear has this inbuilt into its Charge R2, which is fantastic for cleaving and AoEing a lot of enemies down that might be trying to converge on your little asshole. So the Charge R2 on this weapon, and as well as Sword Dance, it's just going to decimate a lot of those big mob packs that you do come in contact with inside the game. So the Guardian Sword Spear is just an absolute powerhouse weapon. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. It definitely surprised me when I was going through and testing out a lot of these weapons. I couldn't believe how easily you can put bosses to bed with the Sword Dance Ash of War on this weapon. It's just a very viable weapon, and it's very good in just about any situation that Elden Ring presents to you. Now for the Ash of War, like I did mention, we are going to be using our Sword Dance. You're going to whack that on keen scaling, because it does take a B deck scaling to an A scaling, which is just a little bit better. You can clearly see here that we get a nice big chunk of extra damage. Feel free to use whatever Ash of War you want with the Guardian Sword Spear, but I really did like Sword Dance on keen scaling. Now, moving on over to the armor and talismans, we are running with this setup. We do have the Mushroom Crown and the Raksasa armor again. The main reason we got Mushroom Crown is, again, we're using Poison Hand, Poison Perfume Bottle, and Kindred of Rot's Exaltation. Just remember that the Deadly Poison Perfume Ash of War is how we self-apply poison. You can also apply poison to the enemies this way, but we can self-apply poison, which does give us the Poison Hand buff, Mushroom Crown, and Kindred of Rot Exaltation, which is a whopping like 41.7% increase of damage. So it's definitely nothing to laugh at. It is a massive increase. We're running the Shard of Alexander, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, and the Millicent's Prosthesis. Common trend throughout a lot of these builds, because they're just some of the strongest talismans. Now for the stats, I would recommend, if you do want to run the Guardian Sword Spear for yourself, at level 150, we have 60 Vigor, 19 Mind, 24 Endurance, 18 Strength, 56 Dexterity, and also 33 Faith. The main reason we got 33 Faith is for Golden Vow, Flame Grabbing Strength, and also Howl of Shiburi. Buffing us up to give us more friggin' damage to just delete the enemies. Okay, so hopefully you guys are still with me. We're finally moving on over to the last build, the last setup for this video, and it has been reserved for arguably the goofiest and one of the strongest dexterity builds inside of Elden Ring currently right now. Trust me when I say you're pretty much going to make a lot of the bosses in this game look really silly with this setup. I'm of course talking about none other than the Blade of Renar, aka the Iron Dancer. And all we're going to be doing with this setup is taking a shit ton of defense, spamming Unending Dance until the cows come home, and just deleting the game. This build is really for anyone that just wants to say fuck you to the game. You know, it's been pissing you off today. Switch to this build and piss the game off. Like I said, don't get frustrated. Get even, boys. Get fucking even. So the weapon requirements, if you want to use Dancing Blade of Renar for yourself, you're going to need 9 strength and a whopping 20 dexterity. So when this weapon is fully maxed out to +10, the scaling for this weapon is just going to be a flat A for dexterity, which means this weapon is going to scale very well with dexterity. So what makes the Dancing Blade of Renar so enjoyable to use? Well, all you got to do is spam Unending Dance. Been a common, theme throughout a lot of these builds is just spam Ashes of War, but I cannot express this enough that with Unending Dance, with this particular setup, all you need to do is hold that bitch down and watch everything die. And the way we're able to hold this down is we're just stacking a lot of defense. Take as much defense as you physically possibly can. It's very hard to move a wall out of the way. You know what I'm saying? Once the wall's there, it's pretty fucking solid, and that's what we are. We're the wall, baby. We're the main foundation that holds up this house that is this build. So we're just super tanky. We're able to absorb a lot of hits from the boss. Why just applying a lot of pressure to the boss with Unending Dance? Literally, that name speaks for itself. It is unending. The only time we stop is because we run out of stamina. Not even the boss's hits stop us. It's only our stamina gauge that is debuffing us at this point. So yeah, just take a shit ton of defense, hold down Unending Dance, and you're gonna profit. All right, so moving on over to the armor and the talismans, we are running with this setup. This is a little bit different. We actually got a different one. I saved the best for last, guys, see? So we are taking the full Verdigris outfit, which is, I think, some of the heaviest and the best defensive armor we have inside the game. So we are taking that full set, which does get us to 100 poise, which I think is the threshold. Once you go over 100, you are like the tankiest you can be in terms of poise. So I think that's how that works. So we have got 100 poise for that exact reason. The talismans we are running Shard of Alexander, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, the Verdigris Discus, which is going to give us increased defense with higher equipment load, and the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, which also greatly increases our physical damage negation. Now, the stats I would recommend if you want to use this particular setup for yourself: at level 160, we have 60 vigor, 19 mind, we have a whopping 41 endurance to be able to stay at heavy load and not be overloaded, so we can still at least roll to get out of some damage, 10 strength, 60 dexterity, and 30 faith. And if you want to be as defensive as you possibly can, do not forget Golden Vow, Black Flame Protection, your prawns. Also, the main thing that kind of ties everything together and how you can just kind of cheese a lot of really tough bosses inside this game is the Iron Jar Aromatic. Do not sleep on this. This is, like I said, the main bread and butter to taking down a lot of those annoying bosses with this setup. When you have the Iron Jar Aromatic on, you become an absolute fucking tank. You cover yourself in steel, you get more poise, I think, and you get a lot more damage negation. This really turns you into a wall. A lot of the enemies' moves are not going to knock you down. There are a few, you're just going to have to dodge roll through those. You can still roll while you have the Iron Jar Aromatic, but this is what makes you super tanky. You don't need this, but it definitely does help with a lot of those really annoying bosses like R'hllana and Mesmer, and just bosses that are really quick and really pressuring. The Iron Jar Aromatic is basically a big middle finger to those guys, and yeah, I highly recommend if you want to be even more defensive, do not sleep on the Iron Jar Aromatic. Ooh. And that is it. That is it for the video. This was actually a really long one. I've been recording for 2 hours. I don't know how I managed to do that, but I did. So sorry if this is a long one. Apologies in advance, guys. But hey, if you're still awake and you're still with me, maybe hit that like button. It really does help the channel out. So hopefully this video did help you guys out. Do you agree with my top 6 best dex builds / weapons inside of Elden Ring? If you think I missed anything, or if you think this list is stupid and I must be huffing bath salts, just let me know in the comment section down below. I always try and get through and read a lot of your guys' comments. Well, I don't want to keep you guys here any longer than you need to be. Appreciate all love and support as always. And until next time, stay safe. Peace out.